In the past 6 months, I've gotten a full physical and gone to several follow-up appointments. I had my eyes checked and updated my glasses, and just a week ago, I had my hair cut by a new stylist. For some of you, those may seem like totally normal things, and you're wondering why I'm even talking about them. But I'm thinking maybe others of you are like me and felt a cold sweat coming on just from the mention of one or more of the tasks on that list. For me, each of those simple self-care basics required a huge effort of overcoming my anxieties and facing my fears. I'm Jen Tatro, and this is From Jen. For those of you who don't already know me, I create content around creativity, mindfulness, and finding happiness amidst mental health issues. Last year, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD after struggling with anxiety and depression for most of my life. Maybe that brief introduction is enough to tell you why something like making an optometrist appointment was so hard for me. But I'm going to go into a bit more depth about how it feels, talk about the whys of some of those reactions, and explain some techniques I'm learning to get around the mental health barriers that can turn the mere thought of getting my blood pressure checked into a full-blown panic attack. And I hope some of you can relate or can benefit from my experience or can just add in the comments what you've experienced that might be similar. When I was a child, I always had the sense that going to the doctor was something to be avoided at all costs. Well, actually, it was to be avoided because of the costs. I live in the United States, and I honestly don't know what our insurance situation was, if we didn't have any, or it wasn't very good, or if it was just fine and my fears came from somewhere else. But I know that we didn't have a trusted family doctor or a regular dentist after my parents were divorced. I thought that doctors were for rich people, so I didn't mention it. We were meant to avoid activities that might require a physical, use Oragel if we had a toothache, and just wait out coughs and fevers until they went away on their own. Over time, and in combination with some medical trauma that happened later in my life and the compounding effects of complex PTSD, my attitude towards regular medical care veered away from simply being for other people and became more of an active phobia. It's more than that though, because the fact that I feel that way also causes me to cast judgment on myself. It makes me feel like a bad person. Like, if I do go to a doctor and they find a health issue, that's my fault for not taking care of myself. You can see the vicious cycle, right? You avoid self-care because you don't deserve it, potentially miss something major, blame yourself when that thing is discovered, avoid future care because you don't deserve it, and round and round and round. These complex feelings don't just apply to medical care either. There's a particular sort of self-care that involves opening myself up to another person's judgment or just to social anxiety that's really, really difficult for me. And I do consider it self-care simply to make the appointments for that sort of care and to follow through with going to them. It's so hard for me to even schedule a haircut. I've never had a manicure or a massage or a facial, and the idea of a trainer or a coach both fascinates and terrifies me. And that fear even extends to things like home repairs and car repairs because my house and my car feel like extensions of me, so any problems with them can be attributed to my own lack of responsibility and care. If my car breaks down, I'm a bad person. My CPTSD, the part of me that is shaped by past traumas, says that service providers and medical professionals are the adults in the room who will point out my childish carelessness and irresponsibility and chastise me for it. I will get in trouble if I open myself up to these people. I live in fear of being lectured and denigrated, so much so, in fact, that even when other people around me talk about doctor's appointments or car oil changes or massages, it can trigger me into dissociation and anxiety attacks. Why does that happen? Here's what I've figured out so far. First and foremost, it stems from being a child with too much responsibility. I won't go so far as to say that everyone who is regularly deemed mature for their age was a victim of childhood trauma, but it seems to be super common from what I've read. Of course, I was mature for my age. I was handling way more than any 6-year-old should have had to bear. Or, and this is more pertinent, more than any 6-year-old is capable of bearing. When children are repeatedly given more than they can handle, they don't become magically more mature. They internalize the failure and they blame themselves. Eventually, that becomes such an effective coping mechanism that it just gets carried into adulthood. And the distinction between what is handleable as a fully fledged adult and what would have been overwhelming as a child gets blurry. Secondly, it's more difficult to take on tasks that weren't modeled for you as a child. So kids who were abused or neglected, either by intent or circumstance, didn't have self-care modeled for them by the care of others. I have this disconnect around normal self-care behaviors. So doing something like going to the doctor or getting new glasses feels like I'm playing a role and accessing services that weren't meant for me. Like I'm admitting my neediness and my lack of self-sufficiency. I'd imagine some of you are nodding along with me right now, and others of you are just confused, thinking this makes no sense. And you're both right. The thought patterns and logical conclusions wrought by complex trauma don't really make sense. But brains are really good at ignoring fallacies when it's a matter of survival, especially child brains. That's one reason why therapy works, because it helps you untangle all of those conflicting beliefs that helped you in your past quest for survival and replaces them with beliefs that do make sense, that are better suited to help you thrive in your current life. Before therapy, I would schedule care appointments only when the anxiety of avoiding them superseded the anxiety of scheduling them. I'm learning now to reframe self-care from something I do out of guilt and anxiety to something I do because I, actually care about myself. It's still hard, so I try to take one thing at a time. To get started, I prioritize the most urgent thing. In this case, choosing a primary care physician because I had moved to a new location. And then I just worked my way down the list. Forming relationships with providers makes everything easier. And by that, I don't mean becoming besties with your family doctor. I just mean having a name and a number on hand to call. When you've neglected your own care for a while, the biggest hurdle can be the anxiety of trusting or even finding someone new. And remember that your first choice doesn't have to be the one. Just take that first step of calling someone. And by the way, that goes for mental health care as well as physical. The first step is the hardest. So if you can just psych yourself up, eat that frog, and make the call, you'll have already conquered the most difficult part. And once you've done that, reward yourself. I'm a big fan of rewards for everything, honestly. My doctor's office is right across the street from a great breakfast place, so you'd better believe that I get an egg and cheese burrito and a latte after facing my fears because I earned it. Also, be kind to yourself after the effort of accomplishing something big, even if it doesn't seem like something big to anyone else. You get to define what counts as an accomplishment to you. And you know how much effort and energy can go into the so-called small things. So take a nap if you have to. Binge the Gilmore Girls. Have a long bath. Plow through a Janet Ivanovich novel or 3. Whatever it is that rejuvenates you, schedule that in and allow time for it. I know you could do it. I know I can do it. And I'm really proud of myself for having done so over these past few months. Until next time, I am wishing you love and joy and all of those good things because you deserve to be happy. And I can't wait to talk to you again.